students, welcome to the first lab video of the semester. We are doing lab number 1 today. If you got your lab manual handy, that would be great. I got mine right here. This lab is called the terminology of the body. And what we're going to do here is go over some body terms, which is going to get you ready for this class. And once you watch this video, you want to go ahead and do lab number 1, reading through it and doing all the activities. So, without further ado, here is a person. We have a human person right here, don't we? And this human person is standing in what is called anatomical position. So the way she is positioned right now is known as anatomical position. Whenever we talk about the human body, we are always referring to people in anatomical position. What this is, what this does rather, it gives us a point of reference. So there is no confusion between you and me. If I'm talking about a body, you know I'm talking about that body in anatomical position. So having a point of reference is key. It makes us make less mistakes, fewer mistakes. Now, check her out here. She's standing upright. She's standing erect. Her palms are facing forward. That is a key little part of anatomical position. Her feet are flat on the floor. Most of her joints are at a 180-degree angle. You see her elbow, her wrist, her finger joints there, her hip joint, her knee joint. One joint that's not at a buck 80 is the good old ankle joint. So most of her joints are at a 180-degree angle. So this is anatomical position. Always think about this when we're doing A&P type discussions. Okay, whoops. Yeah, there we go. Didn't think I clicked to the next page yet, but I did. So what we have here are some of the directional terms we're going to use this semester. We're going to compare things. We're going to say one thing is blank to the other. And a lot of these you may know already. Obviously, you know right, you know left. Some of them might be a little bit new. You know superior, you know inferior, I bet. Maybe you don't know proximal and distal, or ventral and dorsal, but we're about to go through all of these terms. This picture of this lady here is nice though, because it's got basically all of them in one image. Alright, so the first set of directional terms we've got are ones that describe the front versus the back side of the body. So, the word anterior, there's that word anterior right there, okay? The word anterior means towards the front. So your front surface of your body, the one that's facing us as we look at her right here, that is the anterior surface. Now, human beings like me and you, we are bipeds. We are bipedal. That means we stand on what? We stand on 2 feet. Bi, of course, is going to mean 2, and ped means feet. Think like pedicure, podiatrist, that sort of thing. Okay? So, because we're bipeds, we actually have another term we use as well as anterior. That other term is called ventral. Ventral literally means towards the belly side. So there's the belly right there. And our belly side, because we're bipeds, is the same as our front or our anterior sides. All right, so anterior ventral, meaning to the front. Posterior, as you might have guessed, means towards the back. So posterior means towards the back. Notice it has a synonym as well, dorsal. So posterior or dorsal meaning towards the back. And again, these are synonyms because we stand on Not 1, not 4, not 3, but 2 feet. Maybe you've heard of the dorsal fin of a shark. So the dorsal fin of the shark, ugliest shark I've ever drawn right there. There's my shark right there. Got some teeth. There's his dorsal fin right there on his back. But obviously sharks are not bipeds, and let's not talk too much about sharks. But let's look at another animal here, okay? This little guy down here is a quadruped, so 4-footed. He's called an eastern quoll. If you ever need a good Q animal, that's him right there. So he's a quadruped. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 feet for him. And this guy, in him, anterior and ventral are no longer synonyms. Anterior is the way he's facing to the front, but now ventral is this underside where his belly is. So these are now different from him. Similarly, posterior towards his tail and dorsal, opposite ventral here, they're not synonyms anymore. Now another good pair of words to know, oftentimes in quadrupeds, we use the word cranial for anterior, and then we use the word caudal for posterior. Cranial means towards the head. Caudal means towards the tail. Okay, let's clear all that. Let's go on and start doing some more terms. When we compare two structures, the one closer to the top of the head is superior to the other one. The one farther from the top of the head is inferior to the other one. So for example, look at President Obama here. Let's do a pair of things with him. His chin is what to his mouth? His chin is blank to his mouth. Well, his chin, you can see it's below his mouth, so the correct anatomical word would be inferior. I'll just stick an I right there. Now, the mouth, again, there's the mouth, is what to his eyes? Giving you a second to answer here, and hopefully you said inferior. Now, notice we could flip things around. I could say his eyes are superior to his mouth. His mouth is superior to his chin. All right. Cool. What else do we have here? One more quick question. Why is it incorrect to say the mouth is superior? Then this is wrong. We don't do this with a period on the end there. You always got to say superior to something else. Similarly, you always got to say inferior to something else. These are relative terms, so they're relative to something else. Okay, excellent. Let's keep on moving. We got another pair of terms we're going to do here. When we're comparing two structures, we can not only compare them, as far as like whether they're closer to the top of the head or not, we can also say whether they're closer to the midline of the body. So midline of the body, imagine a straight line. This is not going to be a straight line here, I know. But imagine a straight line running right down the middle. That is called the body's midline. If something is closer to the midline, it is said to be medial to the other thing. If something is farther from the midline, it is said to be lateral to the other thing. So I got a picture here of some bones. Got a picture of some bones here, and I want to give a little practice, okay? Check out the sternum right there. The sternum right there is also known as the breastbone. We'll call it the sternum. You can find it right in the middle of the chest. If you kind of go between your pectoral muscles, your sternum is right in the middle there. We can see the clavicle up here as well. Clavicle, of course, is your collarbone. If you find your two collarbones and you walk on them, they will take you to your sternum. We see some ribs over here, and then there's some cartilage attaching the ribs to the sternum. They let your rib cage be nice and flexible. Think about taking a big deep breath in and out. All right, with that little background info, let's answer these two questions here using either medial or lateral for our answers. Okay, the costal cartilage, there it is right there, is blank to the sternum. Well, the costal cartilage is more to the outside. It's farther from the middle. I mean, the sternum is basically like right in the middle. So the costal cartilage is going to be lateral to the sternum. All right, so now you do the next one. The sternum is blank to the clavicle. So again, giving you 1-2 seconds, and hopefully your answer was medial, because the sternum is more in the middle compared to the clavicle. Now, similar question to the one we had on the last slide. We're not going to say the scapula is medial. That is wrong. We can't put a period there. We have to say medial to something else. All right, guys, on that note, let's keep on going. And we got another pair of directional terms. Sometimes we're going to be talking about limbs. So when I say limbs, I mean arms and legs, appendages. When I'm talking about limbs, I will use the terms proximal and distal. If something is closer to the trunk, by trunk, think about like your chest and your abdomen, okay, the thing your limbs come off of. If something is closer to the trunk compared to the other thing, then it is proximal to the other one. If something is farther away, it is distal to the other one. Think about it like this, like the one that's farther along the limb is the more distant one. So it's distal to the other. Think about the word proximal, like the word approximate, right? Close. So the one closer to the trunk is proximal to the other. So check out this picture. We got some more bones here in the legs. We see our tarsals down here. Those are our ankle bones. We got 7 of those. And I want you to tell me, you do this, I'm going to make you guys do both these, okay? The tarsals are blank to the patella. The patella, of course, is your kneecap right there. The tarsals are blank to the patella. So I'll give you 2 seconds, and let's walk through it here. Well, the tarsals are farther along the limb, farther from the trunk, so the tarsals must be distal to the patella. Perfect. Now, let's do another one. The femur, here's a femur right here. The femur is blank to the fibula. All right, what do you got? Well, the femur is the closer of the two to the trunk, so it is proximal to the fibula. All right, good stuff. Again, we would never just say a sentence like this, the tibia is distal, period. Because you always got to be distal or proximal to something else. Okay, amazing. Let's keep going. A couple more, guys. A structure that's closer to the surface of the body is superficial to another one, okay? The one farther from the surface is deep to the other one. So if you look at my skin section I've got here, got some hair, got a layer of the skin called the epidermis, another layer called the dermis, then a fatty layer called the subcutaneous tissue. Now, let's check it out here. The epidermis, there it is. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't have my drawing going. My bad. The epidermis is blank to the dermis. Shout it out. And the answer is, it's superficial. It's closer to the surface of the two, so it's superficial. Okay, the dermis is blank to the subcutaneous tissue. I'm assuming you yelled out the answer there. The dermis is closer to the surface as well, so it's superficial. Hey, by the way, don't confuse superficial and superior. People always do that on exams. By the way, that right there is what we call a hint. Pay attention to those sorts of things. All right, we would never say the muscles are deep, period. We would have to say the muscles are deep to the skin. All right, we are moseying along, which is good. Having a good time here. I am, at least. I don't know about you guys, but I am. Another pair of terms are ipsilateral and contralateral. Let's break these words down. Ipsi means same, and lateral literally means side. Think about like a quadrilateral, a four-sided object. So ipsilateral structures are on the same side. The right arm and the right leg are ipsilateral. Contra, opposite. I'm just going to write op. Lateral again, side. Contralateral things are on opposite sides. So my right arm and my left leg are contralateral to each other. Oh my gosh, it's called a typo here. There should be an N right there. My goodness gracious. All right, good. Good. Let's keep going. We're almost done, guys. When we're doing anatomy, we're going to be cutting stuff up. If you are really in the lab, you would be cutting stuff up with a scalpel. Oftentimes we cut things up and then, or look at pictures rather of things that are cut up, whether that's models or microscopes or what. And one of the things we often cut are tubes. And there's two very basic ways a tube can be cut. You can cut a tube across. So going on the short axis here, you can cut a tube across. That's called a cross section. Is also called a transverse cut. Now, when you do a transverse cut, you'll end up with at least one more, of course, ring-shaped structures, okay? Now, if you don't want to cut across the short axis, you can make a cut on the long axis of the tube. And that is called a longitudinal cut. Okay? That is called a longitudinal cut. Now, in a moment, we're going to learn about some new cuts. One's called sagittal, one's called frontal. We can't do that yet because I've only got a tube here. This tube has what's called radial symmetry. That means its front, its back, its left, and its right are all identical. So because of that, I can't do these terms yet. I know we haven't met these terms, but we will. And I don't want you to wonder, hey, why didn't he talk about those earlier? Don't worry, I will. Right now, all I want to say is when we're cutting tubes, we can do a shortcut across that's transverse. We get a ring. Or we can do a long cut along the long axis. Gives me some parallel looking structures. And that's called a longitudinal cut. Why am I talking about cutting tubes? Well, anatomy is about cutting, and you have so many tubes in your body. Think about it. Arteries, veins, capillaries, your trachea, your bronchi, which are your big tubes in your lungs, your bronchioles, which are your little tubes in your lungs, your esophagus, your small intestine, your large intestine, the ducts in your liver, the ducts in your pancreas. You have vessels called lymphatic vessels. You have ureters to carry pee. You have a urethra for pee. Guys have vas deferences for sperm passage. Guys have epididymides, which are where sperm are stored. Ladies have fallopian tubes. And we could go on. There's more. I mean, I probably named like 15 there. But there's a lot of tube-shaped structures. Okay, moving on. Check out this person. Look how they're standing. What position is that? That's anatomical position. You got it. And what we're doing here is showing the three basic ways we can slice a human up. And these are also called planes. Now notice there is a plane called the transverse plane. Well, we just met that word. And that is going across. That's going across the short axis of the body. And then we have another pair of planes. One called sagittal, one called frontal. Both of those are longitudinal because both those are going along the entire long axis. Now, the sagittal plane is going to give you a left side and a right side. So you're cutting along the long axis of the body. Imagine cutting right down your forehead. Take your hand, your finger, trace down your forehead, down your nose, across your lips, your chin, your neck, your sternum, your abdomen, and so on. That would be a sagittal cut. Now, if you went right along the midline, like I was trying to describe, that would be considered mid-sagittal. Now, in contrast, the frontal cut, the frontal plane separates a front and a back. So again, it's a longitudinal cut because you're cutting along the long axis of the body, but it gives you a front chunk and a back chunk. So front chunk, if you got a front chunk, you have done a frontal cut. There is a synonym for frontal cut or frontal plane, and the word we use there is coronal. All right, that is good. Couple more things to do, folks. I know we're getting towards half an hour here, but we're having a good time, or I'm having a good time. I am guaranteed to have a good time. I don't know about you, but that's the way it should be. The teacher should be like more excited than the student. You ever been in a class where the teacher is less excited than you? That is not good. All right, I'm wasting time here. My bad. In this guy here in anatomical position, notice this green line. Imagine slicing him along this green line. Now that would be longitudinal because that slices on the long axis. And that would be sagittal because it is giving you a right chunk and a left chunk. But it's not mid-sagittal because mid-sagittal will be right down the middle. So this is what is known as a parasagittal section, where we get unequal chunks. A mid-sagittal gives you quote-unquote equal right and left halves. Now we got to put the word equal into quote marks there. I was doing air quotes. I really should get a video set up. But anyway, because we're not truly equal left versus right. But it's a useful description here. Now bear in mind there's one mid-sagittal section you can do. There's an infinite number of parasagittals. Okay. Excellent. Here we see a brain which has been cut mid-sagittally. So this is the right half of the brain we're looking at here. And we see some major structures here that we will meet later on. Now why am I showing you this? Because later on in an exam, I will show you a section of the brain like this and say, what kind of cut is this? And you would say, mid-sagittal. Again, hint, hint, hint. All right. Here we have a mid-sagittal section of the skull. Look at the nice brain cavity right here. Some major stuff. Don't worry, we will learn almost all of these things here, in case you were wondering. Here we see a transverse section of the skull. Very nice here. Again, looking at that cranial cavity where the brain is found. We even see a hole where the spinal cord and the brain connect. So be able to identify these pictures in terms of the cuts. So if I show you a picture like this on a test, you can say, oh, I know that. It's a transverse section. By the way, the word section again just is synonymous with cut here, okay? All right. Here is a heart. Now, when I've cut this heart, I can still see 4 chambers here. There we go. Let's do a different color. I don't like that. I'm going to do yellow here. Okay, I can see my left chambers and I can see my right chambers. So this cut is not separated left from right. Instead, it's separated front from back, and it is a frontal section. Hey, just in case you're wondering, look at this. I wrote R's over here, which is on the left side, on your left as you're facing it. That's because you're always facing the person, okay, or the organ. So you got to think about anatomical position. Your left is the person's right. So these are the right chambers. These are the left chambers. Okay, guys, I swear we're almost done here. In fact, this is the last slide for this lab number 1, which is awesome. Here we have cut 2 organs transversely. The trachea, here's trachea here, and the esophagus. Now, these are tubes. So when we cut a tube transversely, the trachea illustrates this beautifully, we get a ring shape. Your esophagus is like a collapsed ring here. Your esophagus isn't normally wide open unless you're swallowing a big, bite of food. So, rings, or collapsed ring in this case, when we slice across a tube, and that's what we've done here. We've done a transverse section of the trachea and the esophagus. By the way, can you touch your trachea in your neck? If you touch your trachea in your neck right now, go kind of low in your neck, you should be able to feel the rings of cartilage in your trachea. And that's why it doesn't collapse. Your esophagus doesn't have those rings of cartilage, so it collapses. And by the way, did you just notice your trachea is the one in the front? You can feel your trachea. Your trachea is anterior to your esophagus. I think I just answered a question in your lab manual for you just now. All right, folks, that is it for lab number 1. This was fantastic. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.